T guy is kind of beta male, soy boy, fat, you know.
Yeah, and it's untrue because you think of like those guys, like you mentioned, like motocross guys, combat fighters. Those are psycho competitors. Guys like Forrest Griffin, he's been an open client of mine for years. A lot of traumatic brain injury stuff. And looking at some of these athletes, you know, these fighters, and getting their blood work done then to see a baseline of where they're at, so that over time, 5 concussions later, they can show a massive drop in testosterone levels due to injury.
All right. Good morning, guys. So I was chatting a little bit before, Mike. So we got Adam Lamb on here with us. Excited to have Adam on for a chat. But I was telling Adam, so this week my throat's a little raspy because I went to a couple different jiu-jitsu studios. And as you know, at the end, all the guys line up and, you know, shake hands, fist bump, you know, all sweaty, slobbery, blah, blah, you know, and I think I may have forgot to wash my hands right away or something. I'm really not a germaphobe, especially being in those places, but I think 90 guys spitting and slobbering on their hands, and then 2 kids at home. I got a little something in my throat between one of them.
Grappling. I'm actually, I'd love to get Adam's take on this because I'm probably the wrong end of the antithesis of germaphobe. Like I actually probably could use a little bit more concern about airborne and like skin-borne and water, you know, like moisture-borne illnesses and gross viruses. But grappling might be the grossest. It might be worse than like orgy. Like when you really like you staph infection and guys sweating and training for long periods of time, grinding their bodies into each other. It's all horrible. It's disgusting. It's the most disgusting thing.
I like the combat sports stuff. The thing that always like there's something about like just rolling around with a dude, like some bearded guy's beard on my face, sweaty. Like I'm just like, I don't know.
Beard is rough, but I will tell you this: chest hair is way worse.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm from the east side of LA, and I grew up with a lot of like Persian and Armenian guys, and that's both have an extraordinary culture and legacy of grappling. And I trained with some gnarly dudes who were so covered in hair it looked like they had like mink coats on, and that's the grossest there is.
Yeah.
All right. We're learning all kinds of new stuff. Look at that.
Yeah, no,
right off the rip, man. We're
get past Mediterranean chest hair.
Well, I definitely appreciate Adam coming on. He's got a lot of things going on that we plan to get into today, but I was thinking about, gosh, you know, just where to start, and I think if we can go back maybe a little bit. So I was saying before we turned on the recording, you know, Adam was initially a Michigan guy. Now he's in Texas now, but had but you started it in Texas, I believe, right? And the longevity kind of HRT clinic, or was that in Michigan that you started in Michigan?
Yeah, so 2012, I launched a nationwide telemedicine company focused on health optimization.
Got it. And then how long how long were you in that space for? Would you say?
Yeah, I'll give you a little background. So I've always had the passion for health and wellness. I mean, and for me personally, so when I was like 20 years old, I had low testosterone and couldn't figure out, you know, how or why. You imagine I'm 45 now, so 25 years ago. And, you know, going to see doctors and finding out I had a doctor friend who's like a neighbor of a buddy. I wanted to get a blood test. I was reading stuff. Maybe it's low testosterone. He's like, all right, I'll order the blood work for you, but you're pretty young, probably not an issue. And I had like a 190 testosterone.
Oh,
yeah. At 19. And so in part of that, I think there was this piece now looking back, obviously not at the time, but that led to like lack of motivation. I was still mentally driven. So like going to the gym was like part of my identity. So I still did that, but I still like drinking and just doing other things that weren't productive, focused. I was also 19, 20 years old. I think led to that aspect of it. And what happened, it was just frustrating because no one wanted to help, right? I'm a 19, 20-ish year old kid. You know, those are kids in my eyes, and had low testosterone. And they think either from like a testicular injury, because I used to race BMX, or from concussion. I used to be a scrappling, getting, you know, I don't know how many times I've been knocked out and had a couple broken noses fighting when I was younger too. So couldn't really figure out why, but even endocrinologists, things like that wouldn't help. I found some docs out of Florida that were like future focused longevity guys. That eventually right around 24 put me on TRT. And then, so like I discovered that in between 20 and 24, I just started reading everything I could possibly do it. The dark side of hormones and obviously the light side of it. And that process just became like just so engaged in all of it, learning all of it. And I did some like online coaching while I was also a loan officer at Quicken Loans. In doing that, though, it aligned with a lot of like these successful executive type guys that had lots of money that I wanted to be close to because I want to like learn, hey, how do you make money, build businesses? And these guys want to be close to me because they want to get fit and in shape and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, at this time getting into like 26, 27 and realizing that these guys in their late 40s and 50s, a lot of the issues that were being overlooked were hormones. And so I'd be like, hey, you should get your hormones checked. Here's the labs you should get ordered. And the doc, he's like, dude, my doctors don't know what this stuff is. I'm like, man, these guys are rich, like tons of access. How do they not have these doctors? And so I would reach out to the docs that I worked with out of Florida. I was like, hey, can we bring people to you to like do? Yeah. So I started this kind of middleman, like concierge thing, just as like I wanted to help, right? These guys, proximity. I liked being like this resource for these guys that have like unlimited resources. And eventually a guy named Josh Linkner, you may have heard of him. He's got a great book, Disciplined Dreaming. He was a partner like Dan Gilbert, did a lot of stuff with the Quicken Group. And he's like, dude, you should start a business doing this. And I was like, I don't know anything about building a business. He's like, you're already doing it. He's like, you already have customers. You've already figured out a way. So I read a bunch of stuff, read all the DEA guidelines, read all this stuff, and started this nationwide telehealth platform, figured out how to do it through remote and pharmacy partners. My initial one was there in Michigan, and started from there. And in 2017, brought in an investor who was a client first, who totally changed his life. He wrote me a check, sent it to me, never met him in person. He had done like a $10 million exit on a protein bar company and really helped mature me from an entrepreneur, the back end side of the business, right? I was great with taking care of clients and sales and understanding that, but like the structure of the business. And, it's basically my mindset was like, just get as much money in and try to keep expenses low. And then, learning how to run a P&L and all that kind of stuff. So 17, we really scaled that. The hormone side of it, rebranded it to Renew Life RX. And then in 2019, I started a brick and mortar regenerative medicine practice doing like stem cells, for lack of a better term. And that kind of started my pathway into like really scaling. So I kind of wanted to prove I could run a brick and mortar platform outside of just doing the telehealth one. And then today, fast forward, I've sold the telehealth platform. We scaled the regenerative medicine platform. I think we're in 28, almost 30 states right now. It helped, guys. In doing so, it has allowed me to line up with some pretty awesome people. In 2021, Tony Robbins asked me to help him launch Life Force. I'm partners with Tony on that. And then now I've been an advisor for a handful of like LifeMD, publicly traded company, to helping them roll out testosterone for men and things like that. So I've been blessed to have a lot of really awesome opportunity and build a brand in the space. I love it. And so it's something super important and easy for me to help out in.
One thing that I was really curious about, especially because you have personal experience with it, and one of the things that kind of guided you towards that optimization was, I deal with so many guys who completely misunderstand low testosterone. They automatically go with, oh, you're not manly. And I just by luck of circumstance, I'm around a lot of professional or high level combat athletes and freestyle motocross riders, people who through injury, through the line of work that they're in, have low testosterone, and they couldn't be more manly. Like, they're the manliest guys you could find. And there's other things that through manliness lead them to have low testosterone. And I was wondering if you could kind of address that, because I think that there's a pervasive idea that low T guy is kind of beta male, soy boy, fat,
Yeah, it's untrue, because you think of like those guys, like you mentioned, like motocross guys, combat fighters. Those are psycho competitors, right? Those aren't your golfers necessarily. They're not knocking golf, but it's just a little different of a experience. And one of the things we started doing in 2019, we had connections with UFC guys like Forrest Griffin. He's been an open client of mine for years.
Pretty manly.
Yeah, manly dude.
Little.
But what we were talking about and working with some guys, I can't think of the doc's name, out of Northern California, did a lot of traumatic brain injury stuff. And looking at some of these athletes, these fighters that are 21, 22, 23, and getting their blood work done then to see a baseline where they're at, so that over time, if 5 concussions later, they can show a massive drop in testosterone levels due to injury potentially, right? And so we looked into a lot of that stuff too. And I mean, my son's 16. I have him get his blood work done, just baseline, monitor it. And that's something that I think is overlooked also, is that like we should be checking things when they're good to have a great baseline.
Right.
Second thing is just in society, like all these endocrine disruptors, things in our food, things in our clothes, things in our detergents, all these kind of things that are attacking our endocrine system, that are the guy, low testosterone is typically a late 30s, early 40s thing, just based on the traditional decline of, let's say, 4% a year. And once you get like 30, but that's like, number one, young boys are not even reaching full peak testosterone. So it's like, let's say back in we're probably similar age. Let's say our peak was, let's say we hit a 900 or something. Kids today are not even at 600. And so that decline that's starting earlier, which is even earlier because of the food they're eating and the environmental issues. Most guys in their late 20s are running around with 300 testosterone. So who knows where they're going to be at 40, 50, and that low function of life, body composition, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I mean, low testosterone is just something sometimes outside of our control, especially today. And it doesn't mean you're less of a man.
Yeah, it seems that there's a lot of, as you mentioned, a lot of younger guys, and it seems there's I used to think it was just the bodybuilding, anabolic steroid seeker kind of mindset of young men, right? Like on social media and stuff. And there certainly is some degree of that, guys that are looking into testosterone and such, but it does seem that there's younger and younger men looking for solutions, and they're pretty convinced they have something wrong. And I think one of the things I'd just like to get your take on that I'm concerned with, because I do some volunteer work in our community here with some local youth sports and things at, high school level. And I hear a lot of kids asking about, well, I'll take SARMs because that's not a steroid. I'm not on steroids. And they want to take SARMs, or they'll go to some peptide website, things like that. I mean, you've been in the industry a long time. I'm sure you've seen, how those things kind of started and where they are today. I'm just curious, having a son yourself and just you being so close to it, like, what are you seeing out there? And are you seeing kind of more of is there more of a concern because these young guys are having these issues and they might be looking in the wrong places for solutions? Like, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, for me, even the first testosterone I got on was black market. I haven't dabbled for a few years in the bodybuilding space, so I had almost out of curiosity of, like, I had all the knowledge and I was like, what else could I push to, which I don't recommend, especially as guys get older. And I think there is a piece of that. Like, SARMs weren't really around, but at the end of the day, Muscle Tech had an androtestin, nortestin thing, was basically Brecka in a pill, and then they realized what it could do. And yeah, when I'm talking to young guys, I'm like, just there's a way to live healthy and promote optimal hormones. And then the other part is under genetics, right? Like, you see a guy like a 19-year-old LeBron James did not have the same hormones as I had at 19. Like, that dude, we always talk about genetic freaks, and these people that are just big, muscular. Like, they had, LeBron James at 19 might have had a 1900 testosterone or 1800. I don't know, right? Genetically, just a little bit different. And so there's a different play in that. But yeah, it's a bad decision for that sub 25-year-old, in my opinion, just to hop on some kind of anabolic as a solution versus going down the path of discovery and getting some blood work done, testing genetic stuff, see where they can change their life. And unfortunately, a lot of young people have bad habits, right? Bad sleep habits, drinking, eating bad food, because they're young. And so that's going to hinder that too, right? With young athletes, just getting them in peak performance from a lifestyle standpoint first, before necessarily looking at the hormone issues.
That's one of those things, and Joe and I have talked about this ad nauseum about, knowing just enough to know how little you know, and kind of lifestyle causes for hormone disruption is one of those things. Like, I know it exists and I kind of have a cursory understanding, but from my uneducated view, I would love for you to illuminate how much of these younger men, teenage boys who are supposed to be, ape-like with their hormone setup, and you're starting to see that decline, how much of it is just outside of chemical, just lifestyle stuff? Because I was thinking about how, talking to some younger guys the other day about how awesome video games are now. I mean, they're genuinely amazing. And I could only play so much Super Mario 2. Like, it was just too boring after an hour. I'd have to go.
I turned 14 and I was
doing something. And I think, like, it's so easy to stay up late because you're staring at your phone. It's so easy to sit on your ass for 3 hours because Madden 2K25 is amazing. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's things for sedentary nonsense. I was just wondering what your take is on that.
Yeah, you know, it's I was never into video. I mean, I had like Nintendo and stuff like that, but I was jokingly like, once I found girls, I lost interest in video games and
Quick.
girls. And so, but like my son, he likes video games. Like you know, there's a part of us being older and being like, hey, you're wasting your time. But at the end of it, it's part of their social thing, right? He'll be on playing some Rocket League or something with 4 or 5 of his buddies. They're all talking trash and having fun. And it's part of a cool social thing that unfortunately we didn't really have. But at the same time, my son plays competitive soccer, right? 5 days a week, he's on the field, practicing games, things like that. Same with my daughter. She does competitive cheerleading. So I think there's somewhat of a, not necessarily a lack of sports, but a lack of just, you know, like our family does fitness, right? Like that's what, as parents, my wife gets up at 5 a.m. and goes to the gym 5 days a week. I'm up in the treadmill, sauna, cold plunge. Like our kids see it. And I think a lot of that is the parents, right? The easy thing to do is to rip through the drive-through. The tough thing to do is prepare healthy food and keep that in the fridge. And, you know, my kids still eat like crap too. And they know, but at least they're knowledgeable. Like they'll have, you know, a bag of Doritos. I'm like, what do you got there? He's like, oh, bag of cancer, right? They know. I've at least preached them enough to know that what they're consuming may be bad, but also giving them the space to be kids and have a little bit of that stuff. But it is definitely, kids are not as active as they should be. And even, you know, you break down like PE. I mean, dude, when I was in junior high, we were doing like gymnastics, right? Like it was, we had, even in high school, like men's conditioning, where like beat the hell out of each other. Weight training. I'd weight train like 2 hours a day. And where today it's like, hey, Jimmy, if it's okay and you want to walk for 20 minutes in a circle in the gym, that's okay. And that's their PE. And it's just, it needs to be more strict and it needs to push these kids, and the parents need to get involved with like having some accountability about the kids' state of health.
Yeah,
it's hard though. I'm sorry, go ahead, Joe.
I was going to mention just on that note, and this is not a negative comment against band. I just want to preface. My daughter is in band and she loves gym. And we were meeting with the PE teachers and they just said that they just voted at the school boards, because you mentioned parents getting involved. And my wife and I were bummed that we weren't there. They're counting band as their PE credits. And we're like, no, like that's not, you know. So we're like, okay, we got to talk to our daughter, because like, you know, she's a little, we have two girls, super blessed. They're both amazing. And one, I'd say, lean more towards like rugged, loves jiu-jitsu, loves hands-on wrestling, all that. My other daughter does it, but I call it play jiu-jitsu, or it's giggles jiu-jitsu is what I call it. So she's always like laughing with her little friends. And why don't you roll?
That's how I think.
Well, I go, why are you letting that kid hold you down? She's like, well, it was his first class and I just felt bad. I just wanted to let him do. I was like, you could have rolled him like 17 times. You wait till the very end to roll him. And then you know, anyways, my point is, but she's more artistic and she really likes, you know, her kind of getting into band or whatever. And it's like a pretty cool little thing to see her kind of exploring that. So nothing against it, but I'm like, no, we can't be sending that message that, you know, band is going to take PE. So that was really mind blowing to me. And that's originally what I was going to school for. That's why I actually stopped right before student teaching, because I saw the cuts happening at the time. You know, in Michigan, they were happening pretty heavily. And I was like, well, that's not really a good future job security here. So I switched to more exercise phys. But so anyways, I just kind of an anecdote there that I thought of, because it definitely caught my eye.
It goes back to the parents too, you know, like if like go on family walks, right? Like there could be like walking in nature, right? It's a beautiful thing. And a kid who's a little more art focused is going to be maybe more interested in, you know, the leaves changing and being outside, like whatever, right? Seeing outdoor stuff, but it's still instilling activity into who they are. And that's important, because then it becomes what they want to do, right? Like my daughter just constantly is cartwheeling around doing stuff, because that's what we've ingrained in her is just being active feels good. Same with my son. He's on spring break right now in Florida with his buddies. And these guys are playing like 3-hour spikeball tournaments, and then they'll go play volleyball, and then they'll like go swim. And like, they're just active kids. They're not sitting on a phone. But that's a decision we've made as parents too, to show that is like, hey, this is how we live. We move our bodies and we make physical activity fun. And now it's cool. He's 16. So he's like going to the gym, and I'll see him and his buddies at the gym. And it's kind of, it feels good as a dad who's like fit when I know that he's happy to introduce me to his buddies, and that they all kind of, you know, I'm in pretty good shape. Right. And so to like look the part as well. Right. So like, that's another part of being a parent is I don't want to be full of crap. I don't want to be talking one thing, but living a different thing. Right. Sure. So I think it's important to instill that in our kids. And it's just, we've gone far away from that. And you can just look at old PE stuff or whatever, right? Like just, it's not the same as it used to be. And we're coddling kids and then giving them devices. And again, I'm not against the devices. I never talk about my kids about how much they're on the phone. I'm on my phone all the time. But it's a matter of just instilling that physical activity is key. And it's key to longevity and living a better, healthier, active life. And at the end of the day, like a kid that's healthy, that can jog a mile, is going to have a better experience in life than a kid who's obese, who can't do any of that stuff, who might be getting made fun of and all these kind of things too. Right. So that there's the emotional, psychological side. And then they start attaching negativity to activity because they're made fun of, you know, and it can create a bad life for them. So I think really I preach on it for parents to like step up and lead your household for physical activity and just awareness around what you eat, consume. I mean, like my kids have never had tap water, right? Like they only know spring water. You give them a tap water at a restaurant, they're like, oh, it smells like a toilet. So there's just those kind of things that I made a decision because I didn't have that in my life growing up, that I was going to lead my family that way. And at any time, it's never too late. Parents can make that decision.
I couldn't agree more, and I would never. Jenny, everything you said is I think valuable. But as you're saying it, I was thinking back to conversations I've had with like even real like high level bodybuilding coaches and physique coaches who now we're talking into the fringes, where we're talking about like not only eating to be lean and healthy, but eating to pull water out of your body, like crazy stuff, right? And we were discussing something that I kind of started to become accidentally aware of, that in generations past, literally the only fat people on certainly in our country were extraordinarily rich, because you didn't have the chance to be fat when you were a normal person. You just didn't have the luxury of having the access to food, the resources, and the money to even, to stuff your face.
Yeah.
Now things have kind of really changed. Like the only people I know who, especially after you get, into your mid 30s, the only guys I know that I hang out with that are in great shape are typically, I'm not saying they're Rockefellers, but they're affluent enough to kind of live that lifestyle. Mm-hmm. And I always think back to talking to Nate Diaz about how it was so hard for him to understand nutrition because his mom was a single mom who worked 2 jobs and just to keep things afloat, and that him and Nick had convenience store breakfast and then fast food dinners, because that's all his mom literally could, with time and what she had going on, that's all she could provide for them. And I was just wondering, in your opinion, there has to be ways to, and without dispensable income, provide that environment for your children. But how does one go about doing it when it does seem like it's a much more upstream swim?
For sure. I mean, obviously it starts with, again, goes back to the parents of like making a decision to be more educated, right? How much time we spend on Netflix and scrolling, like there's an opportunity, and that's the benefit, I think, of social media and things like that, is we don't have one source of information, which would be like mainstream news. We can go on social media and we can go on YouTube and we can watch stuff and learn things. So I think parents have to get engaged, but it's a great opportunity for kids to get engaged. And, the school is not to raise my kids, but at the same time, heaven forbid, the school is teaching a class about nutrition every single year, like legit nutrition, not woke mainstream nutrition, which is starting to become untangled as well, which I'm excited about. And so, yeah, there's a part of that. But, to your point, even specifically, I had a top female fighter, young killer, come over because she had issues. Her thyroid was just basically stopped, hair's falling out. And they were looking at, hey, does she have a thyroid issue that we need to address and take some clinical stuff because that could be considered a banned substance. And I had a conversation with her. I'm like, tell me about what she trains 4 hours a day minimum. And I'm like, what'd you eat this morning? Nothing. Trained 2 hours. What'd you do after that? Literally had Skittles. Okay. What'd you eat after that? And then it's like I had a turkey sandwich. But, and so no one, and this is at a top level athlete, was addressing her nutrition because she was just a badass, right? Because she was tough and like she was a winner. No one was there. It was all focused on performance versus, what is she consuming from a fuel intake? And so like we adjusted her diet. I'm like, here, you need to eat like a killer. You can't eat like a kid, even though she's mentally almost like a kid, like early 20s. And thyroid regulated, hair got normal, like performance improved, and it was an eye opener, I think, for a lot of stuff getting ignored. Even at high level athletes, like you mentioned, as well. So it's education. And at the end of the day, I think the healthier we are, the less money some of these larger companies make. And so they're not going to go and put a bunch of money behind that. So we as the people kind of have to step up and educate, parents, starting with them.
Yeah, I think it's a really, really good point because I've seen very similar things, and that was some of the conversations I had. And fortunate, we have a lot of kind of higher tier athletes in this area, and a couple that as they're getting ready to go to college. The saying I would say is like, well, you're great, you're a D1 athlete, you got all these offers, but you're never going to reach your full genetic potential eating Skittles and Pop-Tarts. So, but it was like, how are you doing that? If I ate what you ate, and I took it all and just had it just in breakfast, it's just the amount of undernourishment they're getting, but performing at such a high level. It was just really fascinating.
Yeah, when the physical game lines up with the mental game, you become unstoppable. A lot of it's just that mental game. I had the same thing. I was crazy about working out and wanting to be fit and like worship guys like Arnold Schwarzenegger, but physically my body was not cooperating from a chemical hormone standpoint. And then once that changed, I graduated high school as 155 pounds, but I could bench 365. Right.
Damn.
Yeah. I was crazy strong. And then once I've got my hormones optimized, I just genetically just took off. Right. It was awesome. And I look back and I think, man, if that would have been in line earlier with the right home, my single mom, I didn't have a dad around, like wasn't into sports. God knows what I could have done from a professional athlete standpoint. If I had that same commitment from where I could go, understood nutrition, had my hormones and stuff like that aligned, like what could have happened, right? And so there's a lot of great potential sitting on the sidelines because we're not diving down the path of education and nutrition and stuff like that.
What do you do with? I almost think like it's more, in my opinion, it's more of a sin when you have like this young female killer who's coming in with hormones all screwy, T3's pretty non-existent, but you at least know you can really write off, okay, it's not lifestyle, there's something going on here, it's your nutrition. What do you do with the kid who's literally never done anything anabolic? Like he's never lifted weight, he's never done competitive sports, he's never eaten with any type of nutrition, and then he's 20 and he comes to you with a terrible hormone profile, and it's like, well, what cart do we put before what horse, right? Like maybe if you did a couple deadlifts and started eating a really well-balanced diet, maybe we wouldn't even need to do something. But at the same time, maybe some type of chemical assistance might kickstart the process. You know what I'm saying? Like how do you manage that?
Well, I think getting blood work done will help identify that. So you can see like lagging luteinizing hormone, lagging follicle stimulating hormone. A lot of times too, we see really high sex hormone binding globulin, people high stress, just low activity, some of those things. It can even be genetic. And so, obviously we're going to address the lifestyle stuff, especially those like sub 30 people of like, hey, let's do all this first and then come back and see where you're at. But, in some situations, so fortunately the damage is done, right? Like people don't realize like you can really, there's a lot of things you can turn around, but there's a lot of things that you missed your chance, right? Like I talked about testosterone peaking to puberty and some of those things, like if it stops 50% of the way of where it should have gone due to lifestyle, and that decline has already started, it's really hard to break through that. And then at the end of the day, we have to look at, what do you want out of life? What's your future look like? So, and that's where the hormone stuff comes in, and even genetic testing. I mean, we start looking at nutrient deficiencies, and you probably guys listen to guys like Gary Brecka, which I'm glad he's brought that conversation mainstream with just genetic deficiencies that we don't, not everybody has. And so it's like, well, this paleo diet or do vegan or all these kind of things. And like, it's not really true. We want to find out what's going on genetically to see where we may have a nutrient deficiency or where our body doesn't convert the right things into the nutrients, and address that as well. And so we do a lot of that stuff too.
I get a lot of questions from men about replacement therapy, and I wanted to frame this up a little bit and then kind of an analogy I've been using, but I'm curious to see like how you navigate these conversations, and what your personal experience was like. So to kind of set that up, guys will come in and say, I had a friend even the other day was like, okay, well, my doctor told me if I start testosterone, I have to be on it forever. I was like, well, let's take testosterone in the conversation. Let's say, hey, Joe, I'm thinking about working out 3 days a week. Am I going to, do I have to do that for the rest of my life to maintain these health benefits and keep going? I was like, well, of course we're going to say, well, I mean, yeah, but like, you're going to be better off than if you didn't do it. So like, if you did the replacement for 5 years and then you transition off for whatever reason, you're probably going to be better off than if you didn't. So that's kind of like one thing that's out there. And then I think your story is interesting because you have kids, but you had replacement at 19. And that's another concern, is that whole fertility discussion. So I'm just kind of, I guess, like a two-part question, if you will. Like, one is unpacking kind of your journey starting with replacement so young and kind of then starting a family later. And then also second to that is how you navigate those conversations when someone's like, oh, I don't have to be on it forever, and just curious to how you approach that. And if you hear that.
Two most popular questions. And so in both, there's a myth, but I'll expand on it. So at 20 versus 40, our body's ability to regenerate, recuperate, and do this kind of thing is different, right? Like we're younger, our bodies are more resilient. And so both my kids were conceived on, I was on testosterone. I've been on testosterone for 20 years, like over 20 years, right? And I personally would never stop because I know how it feels to be on it. The analogy I use, similar to yours, is, if you're making 150 grand a year and I start paying you $1 million a year, do you have to do the same work for that $1 million a year? Well, yeah, your lifestyle is going to change, right? You go for 150 grand, $1 million a year. And so what the analogy is, like, if you want to feel that way and function that way and everybody operate that way, you will need to stay on it. Do you need to stay on it? No. I mean, even recently I had a good friend of mine who's a physician. I share a story. We're actually going to do a YouTube video on it because it's powerful, because your question is probably the number one most asked question. He's 48 years old. He was married, had 2 boys. Him and his wife were done having kids. He got on testosterone around 40. He got pretty aggressive on it, ended up becoming a pro bodybuilder. So you can imagine, like, he pushed the limits of that stuff, and then ended up, unfortunately, went through a divorce, got remarried. His new wife was like mid-30s, early 30s, and wanted to have a kid. And he's like, uh-oh. And so, like, his sperm count was around 500,000, which is like nothing. Through proper protocol, simple, not extensive protocol, we're able to help reset. And this is, he's 48 years old, 10 years he's been on testosterone. We're able to help reset natural testosterone and help reset his sperm count that got him up to about 50 million within about 6 months. And I think it took longer than it should have. And now she's pregnant. They'll have a baby in June. So all that stuff can be changed. The reason why that conversation comes up so much, and that question of like, oh, I got to be on it forever, is that most docs have no clue on how to reverse it, right? They can write a script for testosterone, understand the benefits, but they don't understand how to undo it, right? So that's thing number one. But here's the deal. At 30, the chance to come off and have everything reset to normal is going to be better than 60, right? At 60, you're just still freaking 60, right? And so your body's had this decline over time with just chronological age. The other part of it, second question, was more around fertility. I don't know if
Yeah, I think you discussed that a little bit though, that you were younger and that's kind of how it happened. But I'm just curious, in like aging men, it sounds like. But go ahead, you can take it. Yeah,
Yeah, and so a similar conversation. It's like we can, when you go on testosterone, you take an exogenous testosterone because you have an abundance in there. Your body's like, well, don't have to produce it anymore, right. And those levels kind of shut down. But you can reset those levels, right? Chemically, we can do that in a pretty quick time. And so I recently had a huge influencer reach out to me. Him and his wife thought they were done. Now she wanted to have a third kid. And he was on testosterone, wasn't happening. And we put him on a protocol. Within 45 days, they're pregnant. He calls me. And my son was kind of like, dude, what's he calling me for? Because he's a pretty big influencer. And he's like, dude, we're pregnant. My wife loves you. Thanks. Now I'm back on testosterone and I feel like $1 million. And so to feel as good as you feel on testosterone, you got to be on testosterone, right? And that's kind of why I say you want to be on it forever, probably. And it's healthy, right? There's a big misnomer with testosterone about cardiovascular disease. And they actually just last week or the week before took black box warning off and actually found that being on testosterone or having optimal testosterone is more cardiovascular protecting, right? Versus the opposite. And so that's going to change a lot of the game for testosterone.
That's one of the next things I wanted to talk about. That's a perfect example of where I love that people have so much more access to information, because if they want information, they can go get it. I certainly didn't have that luxury when I was 19. And I was really, really curious and very desperate to find meaningful information. But at the same time, the access to information is so easy that oftentimes people get down rabbit holes that they have no ability to kind of pull themselves out of. You see cardiovascular problems from testosterone replacement. And I was like, well, you're using, it'd be like using studies on opiates by looking at a heroin addict that kills themselves, so overdoses. They use like a pro bodybuilder or an NPC kid who dies at 19, and by the way was on 20 other substances.
Right.
But it's very hard because I have such a deep passionate love for the medical community, the traditional kind of American medical community. You have something wrong with you, seriously wrong, you had cancer, believe me, you're going to want to talk to your oncologist and listen to everything he or she says. But at the same time, a lot of this misinformation is coming from the medical community. It's very hard to kind of understand where to filter that out. I had a buddy of mine who talking to me about how he's overweight, and his doctor got him eating a plant-based diet so that he could deal with some of the cardiac risks. But at the same time, now his testosterone was 120. And I said, well, okay, but yeah, a lot of these hormones are going to come from foods with cholesterol. And you haven't eaten it. And I'm a dummy. And I was wondering how, like, you ride that line of definitely embracing traditional medicine, but at the same time, knowing where you can be of assistance or kind of take over.
Yeah. And I'm kind of the guy that operates in the space of like traditional medicine is not always true. And when you think of like, most of these doctors, they learn through medical school. Well, guess who makes the textbooks? The same folks that make the drugs. And so and that's why I like the information that's available today. And then you got to look at like, who are you getting the information from, right? Is it some 23-year-old kid on YouTube? Well, pump the brakes, dude. And even when I was like 26, 27, some of these older guys are like, I hear you, but like, dude, I'm 20 years older than you. Now at 45, they're like, tell me what to do, right? Because I've been doing it for so long. And so I think that there's, and that's what I love about the information stuff is there is like skewed studies, right? There's studies that were done that were, again, when you only have 3 channels to consume information from, and those 3 channels tell you butter's bad and beef is bad and like all these kind of things, you're like, okay, better do that. Even my wife we had this conversation, but it's just like, we've been not brainwashed, it's probably excessive, but we've just been taught a certain way that is not necessarily true, right? And so, and even like vegetarian, going on a vegetarian diet, genetically, my body is not okay with an all vegetarian diet. I get massive inflammation, bloating. It's actually becomes toxic for me. And so that doesn't work for my body, right? So there's a genetic makeup, and we think of like different bloodlines, right? You look at someone like Asian, African, Middle Eastern, Northern European, like all totally different. We look different, but the age of our bloodline is different, and what our bodies are used to consuming is way different. And so because of that, we have to make changes. We can't eat like everyone else. I'm a big proponent of 2 to 3 cups of white rice a day, right? People, well, that's carbs. It's not carbs. It's carbs, but it's not a bad carb, right? And so look at Asia. Show me the fat people. 0, right? They eat rice all day long. It's the quality of carb. And that's when we start getting into like counting macros. And I'm not a big count macros. I think if you're overweight and you need to lose weight, count macros is a great place to start. But when you want to get into that like high functioning fuel, like a single ingredient complex carbohydrate that converts into stored glycogen, that now your body's getting the energy it needs. It doesn't have to burn the muscle, because your body doesn't care about having muscle, right? Your body just cares about survival.
Right.
Your body the things it needs. Even, there's guys that, I'm a big ice cream guy, but I eat ice cream at night. People say, oh, that's bad. Well, here's the deal. If I give my body everything it needs throughout the day, from a health standpoint, it's more likely to burn that ice cream off than something else, or burn the fat off, because it's receiving all the correct nutrients that it needs to function based on my lifestyle of exercise regularly, all that kind of thing. So I know I spun that off a little bit into some different stuff, but there's just, it gets very granular with lifestyle and genetics and all those kind of things to really have the best picture on doing it. Doing what everyone else is doing is rarely the best thing to do, right? Or the fad.
Yeah, I was gonna wind back a little bit just on the timeline. Because I was kind of thinking when you were talking earlier. So started the business 2012. I think we connected. I want to say it was like 2019. I know it was during COVID. And just really interesting. So Mike, what Adam was doing is Adam, I'm sure, is very remembers or still knows, but some of the space in this type of medicine is underdeveloped from like a technology standpoint. So one of the things that was cool was seeing how Adam was piecing together different tools internally to help like make a more efficient process and system, which was making it more scalable for his business to serve more clients, et cetera, which was cool to see. But that was like 2012. I think it was like around 2019, I want to say. But you wrote a book in 2017, I believe. So I'm just kind of curious that, especially for people out there, we try to share, different people's successes, optimal living, if you will, health. Obviously, we're talking a lot about that, but just kind of how does one reconcile that into being a good family man, writing a book, running a business, all, waving that in, and a little bit, maybe if you could share a little more about your passion behind the book and just how did you execute all that?
Yeah. Thank you. It's a great question. And it's interesting, today, like, life's really good. And so, I'll do something. I like cars. I'll roll up somewhere in my blue Lamborghini, and kids, younger guys come around. They're like, dude, what do you do? They want to know what I do for work. And I'm like, hey, listen, man, it has nothing to do with what I do for work. It's who I had to become. And they're like, huh? And so I get a chance to preach to them a little bit. And so right around probably 33, I grew up, man, 18 to 28, working in nightclubs. Got into the kind of financial career latter part of my 20s when I got married. And, my mindset was like, I'm going to be fit. I'm good at picking up girls, and I'm pretty good at fighting. But like that was like where my identity was in. Well, who cares about any of that if you want to be a great husband, a great father, and financially become successful? And so I had to take a look in the mirror and make some changes, right? And so I decided I'd start reading books, went down the self-development path at 33. And then right around 37, going through this evolution of basically burning the man down that I was to become this new version of who I wanted to be, right? I want to be the guy, like, who's the guy my wife deserves? Who's the guy my kids deserve? Who's the guy that can go build, $100 million company? And it sure as heck wasn't the dude I was looking at in the mirror. And so I had to make a lot of those changes, mindset changes, and which eventually led to alcohol, where the alcohol was like the elephant in the room of like, man, this doesn't make sense. I've wrestled with alcohol. My dad had a major alcohol issue. Both grandfathers had to quit drinking alcohol. Like, it was a problem for me. And so I looked at it and was like, man, I got to change. So I made the decision to stop drinking alcohol, because I was like, it doesn't align with the stuff I share from a fitness standpoint. It doesn't align with the things that I share just from, who I want to be and who I want to become. And I just quit September 5th, 2016. 90 days into it, I was like, oh my gosh, who knew what a like matrix red pill hack this was? and at the end of the day, it just made me deal with my problems, right? It made me solve problems without sedating. And so I just made massive progress in that. I'm sorry, these guys are putting gutters in right outside my window.
I'm actually kind of interested. I'm like, what kind of beast is behind that?
So what led to me, I was like, man, I want to share this with the world, but I don't want to be preachy. And I reached out to a guy who's a buddy of mine, Tucker Max, if you've ever heard of him. Coincidentally, he has a book called I Hope They Serve Beer in Hell. And totally opposite, which is funny. But he had a company called Book in the Box that helps people write a book. And I was like, hey, man, I want to write this book about quitting alcohol. It's basically a roadmap of like how to remove alcohol. It's called Better Than the Binge, Overcoming the Social Obligation of Alcohol. Because that was the challenging part. It's like, how do you navigate those social things where it's like alcohol is such a driver and center focus of these social engagements. And then by obligation, we're like, yeah, I'll have a beer, and it was just stupid. And so I managed to navigate that. And
I just pulled this up. I know you're not.
Thank you.
Adam is not asking me to plug this, but I just thought I would for those if there's any listeners.
I literally wrote the book to help people. I don't even
exactly. No, that's yeah.
So it's a great gift, to be able to do that. And so I want to write the book because I want to be able to create something that people could find and understand the story. And it's, a book's like a really cool business card too. It just opens up a lot of opportunity to have more conversations, be on podcasts, share that. And I've helped thousands of guys quit drinking alcohol, which is awesome. And continue to share my story, which is a little different than others, right? Like and I'm not knocking any of these things, but like it wasn't AA. I'm not in recovery. It don't align with like the sobriety conversation necessarily. And I think for some guys, the reason they don't remove some of the things that are causing challenges in their life is because they don't want to align with the stigma. I said, I don't care. Like hey, I quit. It doesn't work for me. And my life is significantly better without it. And so a lot of guys hear that story and they're like, oh, I can connect with that.
Right.
Versus some of the other ways that maybe people eliminate alcohol or addiction. Right. And so, yeah. And it never looked back. Right. And conversations pretty regularly about that. It was crazy. Last week I had a guy on my calendar whose name was familiar and I didn't know why. And I don't typically do like the one-on-one consultations anymore since I sold the company. I'm still a shareholder in it, but somehow he got on my calendar and talking about hormones, and he was a friend of a friend, and that's, I guess I told my admin to do it. But he's a retired NFL player. He actually used to play for the Lions when we were younger. So I was like, oh, that's how I know his name. But the main thing why he wanted to get on testosterone is he felt like if he gets on testosterone to help give him that boost from a motivation standpoint, it'll help him quit drinking alcohol. And so it was like a total God thing. Like I was like, well, this is why we're on the call today. So I got to talk to him a little bit about my mindset with alcohol and consuming alcohol. I look at it as like, it's kind of like, weakness or like anything you would think of that you wouldn't go do. You just put it in that bucket, right? There's just stuff that like doesn't align with who I am. I'm not doing it, period. And having that confidence and certainty in it can be a game changer. And that confidence and certainty carries into other things you want to do, right? Whether you want to change your body, build a business, take your marriage to the next level. And so helping guys see it that way is different. That guy's like, I'm done, quit drinking, right? He's still, I think he's 7 days, no alcohol. And like, that's amazing, right? So, because what I know it's on the other, I would never be, my wife and I were talking about it last night, literally, because she was meeting with some girls and one of them were talking about her fiance just drinks too much. And like, I probably wouldn't still be married today. I probably not made the move to Texas. And I sure as I wouldn't be where I'm at financially, business, reputation, all those kind of things, because alcohol would have gotten in the way. I would have screwed something up with it. And when you eliminate that variable of like, I'll never get a DUI. I'm never going to say something stupid under the influence. I say plenty of stupid things, but it's of sound mind. And so when you know that, when you know that's there, you operate at a different level of confidence, right? And so that was the biggest. I've been drinking since I was 14. I mean, in 11th grade, I could drink a half a case of beer like every weekend. Like it was no big deal. And so, I mean, I had a drinking problem in high school, right? So it's like, that's all I knew, right? And so when you eliminate that, you're like, holy crap, I can be this version of me. What can I do now, right? And then everything in my life, all these great things that have come, I've been blessed with, would have never happened had I kept alcohol.
It's a beautiful story. I love hearing that. It's very meaningful to me. I'm 23 years sober, and I knew I was an alcoholic. I've talked about it with Joe before. I'm Mexican Irish down the middle, and I was like going to be a really good manual labor alcoholic and boxer, and like that was cut out for me. But I always deal with guys and it means a lot to me that men in my life will turn to me because they see, oh, well, how'd you do it? And so often, especially the tougher the guy, usually it's military fighters, guys like that, really manly men will say, well, it's the stigma of, I don't want to be an alcohol. I don't want to be the guy who quits, who's a quitter, who's alcoholic, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, you know what the stigma is of doing what you're doing? Like, you're a relatively unreliable, useless pile of shit right now. Like, which stigma are you gonna side with if you have to pick one? You know, and it's very hard to kind of wrap your head around, but it's so difficult to kind of walk that line without sounding condescending. You know?
Yeah, but honestly, like those alpha male guys are the ones I help the best, and that's part of it. And because here's the part, man, that like this is our life, right? This is my life. I only get one shot at this thing. Mm-hmm. I do it my way. And so leading down the path of this authenticity of like, I don't care what anyone thinks about me. I hope my wife thinks I'm a good husband. I hope my kids think I'm a good dad. And other than that, as long as God's pleased with my activity and how I carry myself, it's all right. My people are going to be attracted to me, and the people that aren't are not, right? The people that aren't going to listen to me, someone might think I'm too intense or too aggressive or whatever. Cool. Stay over there. But the people that are like, dude, that resonates with me. And that's part of what helped me find my authentic voice too, of like, there's certain people that will listen to my voice and my message, which is why God led me down this path to lead other people as well. And that's where on the alpha male side, where guys are, I'm like, look, dude, here's the deal. Like, if you can't say no to a drink because you're feeling obligated to everyone else's, you're not as alpha as you think you are. You're not as tough. You're weak, right? You're a sheep. And so like reframing it in their mind. A lot of people don't want to hear that side of it, right? But that's the conversation that guy needed to hear for him to go, shit, I'm done with that. I'm never doing that again. Like I'm not there. I'm here. Well, if you're here, you got to stop doing that behavior, right? Same thing. I mean, it could be porn. It could be any of those kind of conversations where I attach so much weakness and so much like this lower mindset, lower behavior, like to that it becomes like painful. I joke like with guys, I'm like, you wouldn't go do like straight guys, you wouldn't go do gay stuff, right? No, I'm like, I want you to attach that same thing of like drinking alcohol would be like you just going and being gay tomorrow. Like you're not going to do it. You'd be like, no, like gun to your head, you're probably not going to do it. And you have to put it into that compartment in your brain of like, that's how you look at it.
There's one takeaway message from today. It's alcohol is gay.
Yeah, alcohol is gay.
You're essentially gay if you drink.
Yeah, it's the same thing as like, I got nothing against gay dudes. I'm not gay though. I'm not doing gay stuff, right? So it's like same thing as like, yeah, you want to drink? That's fine. I don't care. Like my wife, I have a glass of wine or two, or I'll throw everybody in my Escalade and we'll go to a concert. I'll drive. They want to have a couple of drinks, right? But I don't do it because that's not who I am, right? And so when I can help people connect with that piece of their identity of like, look, dude, if you're a badass, you don't do this. There's nothing tough or awesome about this. And so reframing it. Now, there's a lot of people that will hear that and not resonate with that message. My brother quit drinking, and he is a podcast. It's about sobriety, and it's about it's just a different message. But he has a lot of people he's helped quit drinking alcohol through his message, right? It's funny because my brother's a therapist. I coach. Two different situations, but similar, right? We're both like we laugh about our path. He's kind of the opposite. I'm a little more alpha, conservative Christian. He's a little more on the beta, liberal, like atheist guy. But I respect it. Hey, whatever, dude. To your path. But we're called to be the voice that God's put in us to the people that we're called to serve. And I'm not moving away from that. And I think that message resonates with a group of people. And if I can help them, praise the Lord. Right.
I didn't want to interrupt, guys, but I got to take off, unfortunately. Adam, it was excellent talking to you. It was really, really nice conversation. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, brother. Great.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks as always, Joe.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good, really important, because there's a lot of people. So I'm glad you said that, because there's a lot of people that in this world of I want to please everybody and be happy with everybody, they try to tailor their message. I even find myself thinking of, you want to do good. Your heart's in the right place, and you're like, well, I want to reach those people. I'm reaching these people. I want to reach those people. And if I modify my message, I can reach them. But then when you modify it, you lose them. So it's like, I think there needs to be people in different, uh, pathways, if you will, with a different message, so that everyone can connect. It's kind of like why there's so many different churches, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's hey, they do their deal this way, they do their worship this way, they deliver their message that way, and it just resonates to different people. It doesn't mean, different isn't wrong.
For
But I
sure.
think that's a really great point
Well,
for people to understand that.
and I believe God's called us all to be our authentic version of ourselves, right? He hasn't called Joe to try to be like Jim because Jim gets a certain attention. There's a version of Joe that God will put fire behind when he locks into it. And it took me a long time to figure that out for myself. And it was the same thing going into Christianity. I became a Christian at like 38, right? So I'm like what, 7 years in this. I never went to church, didn't know anything about the Bible, I had to read it, all those kind of things. And what I extracted from it and how I explain the Bible and the Christians I connect to are different than most Christians. The atheists rarely have issues with me. It's a lot of the Christians that are like, well, that's different. Hey, I know it's different, but
Right.
listen, I'm winning souls to the Lord because they're not listening to you're fat, you have a boring marriage, you can hear in your voice that you're full of crap, you don't believe the thing you say.
Yeah.
People that are sitting in your church are not going to move because they can sense the inauthenticity in your message. And so when you can share that authentic version of yourself that God's called you, like God's like, hey dude, I didn't have you go through this life of all this stuff to have you totally flip. And so, but coming into Christianity, I was like, I trying to like fit into the box. What do I got to do to be a Christian? What do I got to sound like?
Right.
And the reality was God's like, no, I need you to be you, because
Right.
that version of you I've created is going to help these people out of the darkness. And then you own it. And the wonderful part is that, and to your point of like, we're so like led to be people pleasers, right? We want to get the grades, we want to do the thing, we want to get all that kind of stuff. And at the end of the day, being a people pleaser is a terrible situation. What being you and being able to serve the people you can serve, there's people that hate me, and I'm totally okay with it.
Yeah.
Right. And there's people that love me. But what I found is that when I locked into that authentic version of me, right, this is the same version my pastor gets, my wife gets, my kid gets, my clients get. Like, it doesn't require a ton of energy. I don't have to think. I just get to come from here, from the soul, from the heart of who I am. And that connects. I think people resonate with that. They're like, oh, that's real. Like that's not lip service. And it's more likely to help them move into a better path in their life by doing it. And it's just so free. And then you have nothing to hide. You don't have to, I mean, I'm on the news sometimes, right? And I'm still me, same version. You can look at the clip version of it. And so that's, if they didn't like it, I'm not changing. Someone else will, right? Someone else will like that version. And that's who I'm called to lead, and that's who I'm called to serve. And so it's a powerful thing. But going back to whether it's alcohol, that could be in the way of you finding that. It could be your hormones aren't optimized and you're just chemically fearful to find that authentic voice and who you should become. A lot of those things can get in the way. So that at the end of the day, that's what I think we should be striving for, is to just love who we are, find that version of us that we're super proud of, that we're not scared to be a light to share with the rest of the world so that we can lead others.
Yeah, I just think it's so encouraging for people, and that's really my hope for our podcast. Is not only can we rotate different people on, not only maybe it's medical information, maybe it's nutrition, maybe it's training, maybe it's just life stuff. And I think thank you, because I think it's a treat that we get to dabble in many of those things I just mentioned with you. And I think it's regardless of someone's where they are in their journey and what their beliefs are, right? But I think I just find it very inspiring for someone like yourself, going back to things you were saying earlier, like, hey, I'm an alcoholic and I'm not the man I want to be, and these types of things. And I'm starting a business and I don't want to start a business. Like, what is this? And all these like fears and failures and doubts. And we're not talking that long. If you really think about it, 13 years, you said 2012.
Yeah.
And then you've been on, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think like Fox News, and you've, consulted with some who's out there. And then you have the 1% that you're doing now. And, I see a lot of your content and you're helping men and you have your book, so like all these things came from essentially nothing and just building blocks over time and staying the path and staying consistent. That's what I hear in your story. And that's why I think it's pretty cool. Cause I've, like I said, kind of was introduced a little bit to you in 2019 and just kind of checked in. And once in a while, if I saw you on social, I was like, oh, cool. Look what Adam's doing. And I think it can be inspiring for people because they see you and they're like, oh, this guy's put together. He's got these businesses. He knows it all. And then you're like, wait a minute, time out, man. Like, go back to where I was where you are right now. Like, it's doable, it's doable and you can work through that, and it's not going to be easy.
And that's, in teaching that is the mindset shift of who do I want to become? And in the process of who do I want to become, what do I have to get rid of? What do I got to let go? What do I have to learn? And what do I have to change about the way I think? Right. So like I had to burn the version of me to the ground, right? A few things that were good that we kept to rebuild that. Right. And that's the part of the process. It doesn't matter what you want to do. If you want this new version of your life, this exceptional version of your life, there's going to be a lot of stuff. And that's why I love sharing that story, because it is, nice to see. I'm sitting in my $3 million house. I got all the cars I want, all the kind of the marriage is on fire, all that kind of stuff. I'm fit, healthy, 45 years old, great relationship with my kids, serving at multiple churches, stuff like, but I was a piece of crap that was focused on myself and trying to fit in somewhere that I didn't fit in with. And so I had to stop and submit to the idea that I have to make some changes if I want to become this. And like the version of my life I'm living today, I couldn't even have put together 10 years ago. And that's what's exciting for me is I'm like, dude, what's 10 years from now? Holy cow, I'm going to laugh at this.
Right.
And so that possibility, the reality is it's this self recreation, right? Like we have to break the certain parts, got to go. Friends got to go. Habits got to go. Belief systems have to go so that we obtain those higher, newer levels to live this. Well, we get one life, man.
Right.
That's it. And I think a lot of times we forget that we, like you get like hit reset or something. You don't. So let it rip because anything's possible. Barely graduated high school, right? Addiction issues, bad family growing up, to like built the family of my dreams.
Right.
No addiction issues, serving other people, helping them get away from it. And it's just anything's possible. And I think that you just have to be willing to decide who you want to become and what's got to go to do that. And then just pursue it like a crazy person, because you only get this one shot. And it's funny, like you talked about us connecting in 2019, and there's a part of this evolution where people are going to doubt you, right? Like people are like, I became a Christian. Like, what's up with this? Like, like, are you just doing this for attention on social media? And I'm like, you just have to ignore it. And then it gets, there's people that stop talking to you and then they come back and they're like, hey, how'd you do that? Can you help me with this? Right. And being okay with it, not being like, told you, like, no, I don't care, dude. I'm just going to do me 100%, 100 miles an hour. And my calling is to serve. My calling is to help people. And if I help people by living my life openly and transparently, and that brings people into my world, to whether it's just some little seed or something massive I can do for them, that's at the end of the day when I'm called home to see our Father in heaven, I want him to be like, good job, dude. Way to turn that thing around. And all glory to him, because it wasn't me. But that's the most important thing. And so that's the driving force every single day for me to do that. And I think when people find that purpose beyond themselves, you get out of this scarcity kind of survive mentality to this thrive abundant, and like life around you gets real good, but that purpose inside you of serving and helping people is massive. And that's what I'm addicted to now. But how can I help more people?
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I want to just, I appreciate the time. I know we're a few minutes over here, but I wanted to tie it together for viewers out there, a lot of different ways they can engage with you through social media, things like that. We'll certainly have all that plugged and such. But I wonder if we can end with just explain a little bit about 1% and the whatever words you use, but mentorship, coaching, kind of, I know there's physicians there and there's men, and just kind of talk maybe a little bit about your approach with that. I'm just curious out there, especially if someone's been listening to this and they're like, I want to get some help, and maybe they say, hey, I think I resonate with this guy. Like, maybe we can unpack a little bit if you have the time. And
yeah, 100%. So yeah, it started a few years ago. I bought this domain. It was just, I don't know, it came out of nowhere, the 1% guy. And the premise behind the mentality is I want to live in the top 1% all areas of life, right? A lot of guys that got a lot of money, but they're in bad health, their marriage sucks, they have no relationship with God, they're not involved in their community, all these kind of things. And so I was like, I want to be in the top 1% in every category, right? And that's what the 1% life is all about, is doing that, because I had to look back at my life and like, yeah, maybe it was in the top 1% fit. That's it.
Right.
So I had to start doing a lot of self-recreation and self-development. And so I started this coaching. I had a lot of guys that are successful coaches that are like, dude, you should start coaching people, like these guys that come to me for advice that run 20, 30, $50 million coaching companies. And I just had a story in my head that, I don't want to be a coach. I don't like these life coaches. But through some persuasion of, hey, look, I've built some cool stuff. I've solved a lot of problems, and I have frames to help people do that in their own life. What took me 10 years, I can help someone do in 10 months, right? And if they're hungry and ready. And so I started the 1% life to do that. And so, yeah, I coach people, self-development, transformational coaching. One of my niches is with doctors, because I understand healthcare, the science, the mindset of the doctor. I've helped hundreds of doctors do lots of different things. And so that's my passion, because I can help them break free of the place they may be stuck in medicine, to expanding into making more money, serving more people, finding more joy and fulfillment in their life. And so I've been doing that pretty aggressively for like the last 2 years with tremendous success, and it's super fulfilling. It's not like work, it's fun.
Yeah. No, that's awesome, man. Well, thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. And everybody out there listening, as I mentioned, we'll have everything in the show notes and descriptions and things, and we'll have some other things we'll cut up from this conversation so you guys can engage with Adam. And I would encourage you to do so and check it out. And as always, send questions in, comments, etc. We're happy to help those, or ping other guests any way we can help. But thanks again. And, I really appreciate the time and coming on. And it's great to make the connection between you and Mike. Being in the small state of Texas too, you guys like next door neighbors, right?
No. 3 hours away, maybe.
Yeah. Well, good stuff, man. Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
All right, bro. Take care.